Robidoux, you can start recording. Welcome everyone to this evening's April 14th meeting of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals. As a preliminary matter, my name is Bill McCusker. I am the chairman of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals. Permit me a few minutes to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. DeRosiers?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. Adams is not in. Ms. Biswas, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep, here.
Welcome, by the way.
Thank you very much.
For staff, I think it's just Ms. Koshevo.
Yes, here. Oh, you forgot Brian.
Did I skip right over you, Brian?
Yep.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Sorry. I guess I did. Nobody else staff-wise. As far as anticipated speakers, Mr. Papalillo.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just let Kate take charge of the meeting and make her presentation and then try to answer the questions that the board may have.
Yep, but I just want to make sure that you can speak and we can hear you. That's what we're doing right now. Ms. Oranchek, is that the proper pronunciation?
Yep, that's good. I'm here.
Thank you. Is Mr. Hannigan in yet?
He is almost. He's going to be logging in soon, he said.
Okay. Mr. Boardman, can you hear us?
Hopefully I can hear you guys, or you guys can hear me as well.
We can hear you. I don't see Mr. O'Connell on yet, so I guess that, oh, there's Mr. O'Connell coming in now. Give him a second to, was that Mr. O'Connell acknowledging that we can hear him? He can hear us? Steve, can you hear us? You're muted.
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I had other noise in the background. I wanted to shut down before I had.
Understood. Okay, thank you. All right.
Thanks.
So I think I've gone through everyone. I see Mr. Murray, site contractor. I think that's, you're with Mr. Papalillo. Can you hear us, please?
Yes.
Excellent. So, good evening. This open meeting of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted to the town's website at www.graftonmass.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. There is no public hearing tonight, so there is no formal public participation during this evening's meeting. However, as chair, I can allow public comment at my discretion, and we will keep an eye on any potential comments from the public. For this meeting, Grafton Zoning Appeals is convening by video conference via Zoom and by TV with dial-in access as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Katrina, that's correct, right? We're on TV? Okay. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded, and as some attendees are participating by video conference, accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording of this meeting. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will allow ZBA members to comment. For items with public comment, well, there aren't any this evening, so I'm going to skip over that part. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So that's the end of all of that I'm supposed to read. So we can at this point turn to our first order of business, which is the Apprentice Place review of landscape plans. Are you ready to go now, Satir, or do you want us? Are you waiting for anyone? Do you want us to move on to somebody else, or?
We're all set. Bill Hennigan is present also, so we can have the presentation made.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Bill, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Bill, you're muted.
Bill, can you hear us?
Yes.
Excellent. And I just want to check, Jeff Walsh, can you hear us? Can we hear you? You're muted.
Yes, sir, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Apprentice Place, you have the floor.
This is technically, I think it's more Kate's show than mine, but we met on the site, walked through all the existing vegetation that was out there, looked at trees that we felt were not of any value, and everyone kind of agreed. Had a couple trees that were, I think, somewhat dangerous that we all agreed on as well. But I don't think that there were any trees that were in the limit of work or outside the limit of work that were discussed to be cut that were healthy. So, and I think that was the point of one of the conditions was that if we were going to cut down a healthy tree, we had to plant 2 new trees in its place. So I think that we're past that. I think that all the trees that were slated to be cut down within the limit of work are agreed upon. I believe anything that we talked about outside the limit of work that was going to be cut down, we agreed that was either dangerous, disease, or dying or dead. And I think that the next piece of that, once that's done, I'm kind of stepping back now, and Kate is put together the landscape plan to show what the new plantings would look like on the site. And I think that that's what we would be talking about tonight. So I'll yield to Kate.
Okay, hello, everybody.
So before we go to the landscape plan, if I may, can we just, I almost feel like there's 2 different issues here tonight. There's the existing conditions, trees that are going to get cut, that sort of thing. And then we can move on to landscape, which is future. So if I may, I just would like to say that Mr. Yeoman and myself were participating in that site walk. I agree with what's been said here, that the trees that are being taken out that are outside the scope of work, outside the limit of work, are diseased, dying, or otherwise should be taken down. I think everything that's on the drawing seems to be correct as far as what's being taken out and what's being left behind. I don't know, Mr. Yeoman, do you have anything else you want to add based on your experience during the walkthrough? You're on mute, Bill. Bill, you're muted.
Yep. Yes, I agree, Mr. Chair, and I've looked at the full-size plans compared to what we discussed as we walked around, and I think everything is as agreed and identified on that walk around.
Thank you. To members of the board, are there any questions about what is being removed or what is proposed to be removed from the site? Okay. Fair enough. So at this point, let's move on to the landscape plan.
All right, I am going to share my screen if that's okay, and I can show the package that we submitted last week, which includes the report that was done by Urban Forestry Solutions. That was the report that identified which trees were to be removed and which are to be kept. So I'm gonna, since we kind of talked about that already, I'll sort of go through that fairly quickly. But if I can share. It's saying I can't share. Oh, there we go. Give me 1 second.
So this is the report that we all received by email and is on the town website.
Can everybody see the screen? Okay, so
Yep.
I will go quickly through the report. This is literally the full report. I just wanted to stop a moment to review the 11 trees that are being slated to be removed because they are either dead, diseased, or dying and in poor shape. So they're noted here on the plan. Each tree is identified by name and location and a kind of quality. There are photographs of each tree. I'll just fly through these. And then I just wanted to start by saying that in terms of the landscape plan, there were a number of items listed on the order of conditions and that are part of Hannigan's engineering plan that was the basis of my landscape plan. So I'm just showing this for a quick moment and then moving on to the landscape plan, planting plan. Understanding that Hannigan Engineering's base plan, I should say their site development plan, is the base plan for the landscape plan. So to describe what I'm showing here, the green line represents the property line over here. The dark blue line represents the limit of disturbance. The light blue line represents the erosion control zones. So the trees that, and let me just take a minute to describe the legend. All the trees that are on our property that are existing that will be remaining have a dot in the center of a approximated tree canopy limit. Trees that, the 11 trees that were identified to be removed have an X in their canopy as noted in the legend and on the plan. Trees that are outside of our property but still existing, I have identified in an open kind of circle. I think that's helpful to understand what the edge conditions are outside of our property. Proposed evergreens have a star-like quality with an X in the center or a plus sign. Proposed shade trees have also have a plus symbol and a slightly larger canopy as compared to the proposed ornamental tree, which is a similar symbol, just smaller. Shrubs are simple circles, but they do have a plus sign in the center. And then there are a couple of hatch patterns that are here that show different kinds of ground plane materials. So I thought I would focus really on the outer edges of the property in terms of the planting, and we can move into the center with more detail if that is of interest, but I know the primary focus is really on the perimeter. So I wanted to say that we'll start on the left side, and which is the west. North is up on this plan. And on the west side, the order of conditions required a fence line, which is shown in a black line here. And also supplemental planting that would provide a screen for the neighbors. And so the evergreen trees are identified where I can locate them. It isn't a solid, complete screen because of existing trees. So where there are existing trees, I can't really plant a new tree under the canopy of an existing tree without causing harm to the existing tree. And so that's the reason why it's not a continuous line from north to south with proposed evergreen trees. I have, in terms of species, the northwest area are eastern white pine, and down in the lower, that would be the southwest corner, I have white fir. And finding evergreen trees that can live in part shade conditions is a little bit of a trick. So there aren't a huge variety to select from. So because we'll have some taller buildings nearby and some existing trees, both of these trees can take a little bit of shade, part shade. So that's the reason behind the selection. Following along the south border, there are a series of shrubs along this steep slope here. Those are the clethra, which is, I want to make sure I get the common name correctly. Oh yeah, sweet pepper bush. And that's a native. By the way, I should have said that the plant list was focusing on native plants to the extent that I could do that. And then some ornamental materials are proposed for more of the interior. So with the exception of some special areas, particularly at the corner of Shrewsbury and Prentice Streets in this area, I'm showing 3 dawn redwood trees, which are a very majestic, very unusual, unique tree that is not necessarily native to this area, but it can survive in our climate. And I thought of those as being an anchor, identifying this project as standing out as different along the street of Shrewsbury. If you, and then there are a few oak trees, red oaks, at the building, behind the buildings. And the idea there is to sort of try to patch the woodland edge that's been affected by the construction of the buildings. So some larger shade trees, they'll be planted at about 3-inch caliper. So they won't be huge right away, but they will grow to maturity as a large tree. But in the interim, the idea is to sort of, as I said, patch that woodland edge. So we have some shrubs in the steep areas, and then around the retaining wall back behind it, as well as in front of it, are a series of shrubs. These are primarily red twig dogwood, which get to be about, well, at maturity, they could be as big as 8 feet tall and about the same in width. When we plant them, they'll be about 3 feet tall. And so that wall is approximately 4 feet high. So you'll see bits of that wall right away, but over time, the plants will grow to obscure the view of the wall. And the idea is that there will be some, as I said, red oaks behind the trees, and some understory trees of amelanchier that will help kind of patch that woodland edge. Moving along to the north on Prentice Street, there are 5 black tupelo trees acting as street trees. I can't place street trees along the entire length of that road because of the detention basin slope, the access road, and the spillway. I needed to provide some space around that engineering area. So the trees are really focused more to the northern part of Prentice, and at the focus on the entry to the project. Also at the entry, there is a eastern redbud proposed right here near the bus station, which is a beautiful smaller understory tree that blooms actually right soon, early in the spring, and that will add a little color and some interest to that part of the project. On the northern edge, pretty much the existing trees are being kept. They are being kept. There are no new proposed trees in that area. Really only proposed shrubs in this zone, which would be something called buttonbush, which is a native wetland plant. So it would work well in this area, which is adjacent to the wetland zone. Coming into the project, I'll just highlight a few elements of the landscape plan. On the around the parking lot, and I'll call this sort of the street edge to the buildings, there are pin oaks proposed that will get fairly tall. They're beautiful oak tree that holds their leaves later in the season, so they provide a little screening, even though they're not evergreen trees. They're a well loved street tree in our region. So that is what is proposed around the edges. In front of the buildings themselves are also a few ornamental, a native ornamental called the Sweet Bay Magnolia, which is a smaller understory tree that gets a flower early in the spring and some nice fruits in the fall. So the idea is to try to keep some seasonal interest with fall color, berries, winter structure in terms of branching or evergreens, as well as flowering and coloring in the springtime. There are places in front of each building that would have ground cover with the trees, either the pin oak or the magnolia in a ground cover base. And then the darker hatch is a very hardy perennial called catmint. And so that will bloom all summer long. So there'll be some color and some interest in front of each of these trees. Very low maintenance, very easy to take care of, a fabulous plant that just kind of goes and goes. And then at the entry, there are also some roses, knockout roses in this kind of bend following the walkway that goes to the bus shelter, bus stop. And those bloom also, these are white that I've proposed with a little yellow center. And they are bloom throughout the season. So from the spring all the way to frost. So that would be a nice also addition to the entry of the project. And at the base of those are perennials, a daylily that's an ever blooming daylily that blooms like a yellowy kind of color throughout the season, also from spring till frost. I think I've hit the main features of the plan. I'll just go to the next image, which shows you some typical details for planting of deciduous, evergreen shrubs and perennials, but probably two items that are more important in your eyes would be the plant list, which is on the bottom left, which gives you a symbol identifying each plant, the quantity of each plant, the size of the proposed plants, both the botanical and the common name, some remarks and characteristics of each of those plants. I really talked about them, most of them already, so I won't dwell on that unless somebody has a specific question. In terms of the retaining wall, I'd like to suggest the unilock material, which is pictured here. This is a limestone color. The unilock, so it is concrete, it's not stone, and it's very easily installed in terms of not a lot of deep foundation walls aren't required. So we're trying to be sensitive to the trees that are remaining and to all of the other site elements in terms of construction of the retaining walls. But the interesting thing about this particular version of this product, this is called the Brussels dimensional system. It's a smaller profile, so it doesn't look like a typical concrete block. It's a smaller I believe it's about, if I get this right, I think this is right, about 4 inches by 12 inches. So it's something like that in terms of the size and the material. You can get them tumbled and they come in a few colors, but I thought the limestone that's pictured here would closely approximate a stone, a native kind of fieldstone wall, that we were kind of aiming for that appearance. And then the last slide shows some images of just the plants that are on the perimeter, not every plant in the whole plant list. So I just want, excuse me, point out a few of them. The white fir is here. That would be on the southwest corner of the property. The white pine on the northwest part of the property. These are the black tupelo, which would be the street tree. It's a beautiful fall color and it has a great bark. It's a wonderful tree. That would be the street tree along Prentice. The special dawn redwood trees, that's this one. This photo shows the whole tree in profile, but actually the bark and the structure is very unique, and this photo probably doesn't do the tree complete justice, but that would be the tree that I'm proposing for the corner, pretty much the corner of Prentice and Shrewsbury. And the final tree is this one in the upper right, which is the eastern redbud, which would be right near the entry to the project. And it is the flowering tree that is near the bus shelter. And that concludes the materials that I planned on showing. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions from the board?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans, go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the work you put into this. And I'll speak to Satir. I know we had a few elbow fights on the landscape plan during the hearing, and it was decided to wait until the project was at this stage. I think that the plan, and I've spent a few hours today, Katrina was kind enough to get me a complete sheets of the plans. So I've spent quite a bit of time today just looking at it. And I have to compliment you, Catherine, on, it is Catherine, correct?
Yes, yep.
Yes, on the landscape plan that you've developed. I think that it's really well done, and there's just so many different species and varieties of shrubs that I think it potentially will be one of the best looking projects in the town. I mean, it's the eye candy that, as I call it, of the shrubs that you've planned for the perimeter and for the inside of this project, but mainly we're concerned with the perimeter. I think is just outstanding, and I think that I have a few questions that I'd like to just share with you and the board, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. First, and I just have a few numbered, but I just wanted to start off with that point. I think that the plan is really, really well done. It will serve the project well, and I think it will serve the beautification of the project well after everything is built and everything is planted, because it'll all be a next spring planting, not in the fall, as I understand it. But the one area that I had thought about was on Prentice Street, where you mentioned the black tupelo, the 5. I was wondering what that void was, and I had a note there to say move it down to cover that area. But I now understand that because of the drainage and everything, you're not able to do that particular area. The one big question that I have is on the corner of Shrewsbury and Prentice Street, where you have proposed the 3 dawn redwoods. And I know when we did the walk around, Catherine, we talked a little bit about having something majestic out at that corner. And the Dawn redwood, I guess my question is there really space there for 3 of them? I have 2 dawn redwoods in my yard, and one is probably 20 feet tall, and it's been in there 3 years. And they're absolutely magnificent trees. And that tree has the potential, not in my lifetime, but in its lifetime, to be 75 to 100 feet tall and to be 25 feet wide. So I wondered about that area, whether that had the space to accommodate when not fully grown, but let's say as they mature. I question whether there's enough space there to accommodate the 3 giant redwoods, and that is an excellent choice. The other point that I'd like to bring up, and I think as I look at that particular area, and again, that redwood, that dawn redwood, is a deciduous tree. It's very fast growing, and it had that basin, the detention basin, is fairly close to where those dawn redwoods are going to be. The detention basin has a need, I understand it, and Jeff Walsh could correct me on this if I'm wrong, but periodically that has to be cleaned out. Now, that's not going to be the responsibility of the town. This is a private project. And so Soter and his crew will have to maintain that basin. That basin is important, I think, to make sure that that stays very clear, because we all know, and it was discussed during the hearings, that there are water problems along Shrewsbury Street in front of, Bradish's clam shack there, that they're in the spring, and, there's a lot of water issue there. So the detention basin, my question there is, considering that these dawn redwoods get very large, and it is a deciduous tree. The needles don't bother things that much, but there is a little 1/2 inch to a 1 inch cone that drops from that deciduous dawn redwood. Those are, and they're small cones, and they're very susceptible to being blown around. I'm just curious in my own mind what effect that may have on the detention basin itself, as far as will that create more of a cleaning problem? And it's not our problem in the town. It's one for Soter to deal with. So I bring that up as something to consider. First is 3 of them, whether there's enough space. Secondly would be the effect that the droppings every fall would have on that detention basin. And if that is a problem, then perhaps rather than a dawn redwood, you could put in, that's as I recall, it's a fairly open area there. So maybe a few, blue spruces, or a few concolor firs like you have in other parts of the perimeter, to replace those 2. That's something I think I would suggest that you discuss with Soter, and my concern for that catch basin. He's going to keep it clean, but my concern would be, if there's a problem and that water builds up and it doesn't flow out properly, then it's going to be a problem out on Shrewsbury Street. The other point I'd like to make is on the wall area that you mentioned behind, I'll call it building 1, the first building as you come in. The area that you have nicely planned a number of shrubs, and you indicated red twig dogwoods. These are all deciduous shrubs. And again, the same, and that's on the other side of that wall. It's on the downside. It's on the detention basin side of that wall. And again, these are shrubs that are deciduous shrubs. They drop their leaves. And my question that I have there is, would another selection of perhaps the rhododendron, for example, the Paris japonica that we discussed briefly. I wonder if, and again, those are evergreen shrubs. There's no leaf dropping there, and there are some small spruces that are available, like a Paul Select, which gets to be about 5 feet wide by 7 feet tall. I'm wondering if an alternative might be worth you all considering in that particular area. And again, it's a great plan, but I look at that area that is very contiguous to that detention basin. So I just make note of that. And that's that point I've covered. The fourth point is, you mentioned on the entrance, a daylily bed with 15 knockout roses. Knockout roses are a beautiful, and they do bloom all year. The thing with knockout roses, you have to cut them back every spring as soon as they show a bud, and then they'll be healthy all year. But they do require a lot of maintenance. And I only speak from experience because I've had 20 of them installed in a former house, and knowing the amount of work that it is, I pulled them all out with my truck and got rid of them because they're beautiful, but they're high maintenance plants. And if they're not cared for adequately in the spring, they really don't produce that well in my experience. And the last question I have is, you have an existing well on the property. The note is that it's going to be utilized for on-site irrigation. I know that this is a big investment on the wonderful plants that you have described for different areas. And I think that there's going to have to be the irrigation system. There's not a lot of lawn here, but what would be your plan to help ensure that this, what I consider to be quite a grand and well done landscape plan? There's a lot of shrubs here. I mean, you have magnolias, you have pin oaks, you have pines, and you have shrubs, and so there's a lot of, in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of watering need in the first year of this planting to ensure that these don't go belly up just by being in the ground. So I would like to just have your comments on what you might be doing with that existing well, because it has been cited that you're going to use it for on-site irrigation. So those are the only comments I have, and I'd just like you to comment on those.
Thank you, Mr. Yeomans. Thank you, Mr. Yeomans.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ranchak.
I'll go from the top comment to the bottom comment. The redwoods, is there enough space for 3 of them? This area right now at that corner, you may recall, is actually fairly kind of scrubby, I guess you could say, scrubby vegetation. And so I wasn't really sure exactly where those 3 could go. Maybe they could be spread out or put in different location. But one thing that I really liked about the redwood is that it does get very, very tall. And I know there's been concern about how much of these buildings do you see from the street. And so I think it's a good selection because it does grow fairly fast and would provide some screening. In terms of the cones and the debris, I would have to ask Bill Hannigan to weigh in on that. I am not sure if that would be a problem.
I think there's going to be regular maintenance that's going to have to be done on an annual basis. So this is a little bit different from a subdivision or a even a condominium complex. This apartment complex will have a maintenance crew essentially as part of the team. So they're going to be doing, they're going to be doing the beds, the grass, cutting the grass and cleaning the parking lot off and stuff like that. So that's going to be just one of the things that group will be assigned to. I don't see the maintenance of the basin being an issue, quite frankly. It'll be extra stuff to pick up. I do want to say that I'm thoroughly impressed with Mr. Yeoman's knowledge of landscaping and plantings. I'm just amazed at that, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that he's revealed the secret to having knockout roses grow well, because I just planted some recently, and I guess maybe I'm wondering if I should rip them out now or wait a few years, at this point in time.
I'll give you the secret, if I may, Mr. Chair.
After the meeting sometime.
Okay.
We need to keep
Okay.
moving here.
Trim them in the spring, not in the fall.
Mr.
But
Chairman,
when
if I
the
may,
basin, it's maintenance we're going to have to do no matter what. So what we're picking up is immaterial. It's the fact that we have to maintain it. So it is what it is.
Mr. Walsh, I think, was trying to speak.
yeah, I just wanted to weigh in on the potential maintenance problems associated with the basin. Quite frankly, I don't foresee any. I can appreciate there'll be more landscape and grounds maintenance than you'd normally see. And I'd like to think that'll include the stormwater basin, because it is a visual part of the facility, certainly from the residents up in their units. But nevertheless, I do get concerned about the blockage of the outlet, where water flows out of the stormwater basin. And when we're having this discussion, I double checked the plans. The outlet control structure from which water flows from the basin into the pipes and into the street drainage system. There's a row of orifices at the bottom. There's 4 of them, 3-inch diameter. So I think the material, if there's cones about 1-inch diameter, there might be a little bit of blockage from time to time. But that's not going to last for any length of time because of the maintenance that goes on. And there's above that row of 3-inch orifice openings, there's 2 rows of 6-inch diameter orifices, 3 openings per row. So the point is, I see the stormwater basin functioning as intended, even if there happens to be a windy day, a storm, everything happens at the same time and these cones get into the basin. I don't foresee a problem with the basin functioning as intended, even if a few of the lowest orifices get blocked. And again, maintenance would take care of that sometime shortly after the storm occurs, I would like to think. So that's all I've got on that one. Oh, and also with the trees, with respect to the location on the berm, they're at the base of the berm, almost basically, they're not in so much in the fill berm, but going to be planted in essentially native material. So I don't see them being problematic to the berm. Trees like this, you certainly would not want to plant them up on the berm, because for fear of them falling over and uprooting, that would be problematic to the impoundment. And lastly, as far as blocking maintenance equipment, because they're down at the base of the berm, maintenance equipment might access the top of the berm, but not the bottom. So again, in short, I don't see these trees being problematic to the stormwater basin. Thank you.
Thank you. So back to Ms. Ranchik.
Thank you. I also want to agree with what Bill Hannigan said, that the landscape comments are very thoroughly investigated, and obviously you know your plants, which is obviously a huge pleasure to me. I'm a kindred spirit. I love the plants as well. But in answering your question, right now, the next question I have is, what about the shrubs in and around the retaining wall at that intersection of Shrewsbury and Prentice Street? And the plants that I selected, although not evergreen, and I see your point about that, There's a couple of reasons for the selection. The red twig dogwood is fabulously interesting in the winter because literally the stems are all red. And so even though it won't block the wall, which isn't exactly what your comment was about, but I did want to kind of reiterate or add to the comments that it will be an interesting filtered view of the wall. You won't completely obscure the wall, but you'll have something interesting in the foreground. And then also there are oak leaf hydrangea around the edges, mostly behind the wall, but also to the sides, both sides of the wall. And those also have very interesting bark and shape, and hold on to their flower heads into the fall. So there's a variety of interest here that I think kind of maybe takes your eye away from the wall itself. But you are right that they will drop leaves and such. So we hear that maintenance will be done on a regular basis, but they are not evergreen. And so one of the reasons why I selected these particular plants is that when I was on site and I was looking at the whole kind of region, the whole area, it's got a very kind of rural feel to it. And I didn't want the outer edges of this property to look too kind of manicured in a way. I wanted it to look, I thought it should look as natural as possible. So I felt that these plants offered that kind of appearance. Let's see. And the knockout roses, I do know that you do have to maintain them like any plant. So I hear your point on that. I myself have not had a tremendous amount of problem with them, and I've seen large displays where they are thriving. So maybe we can share notes on how to make sure that is achieved. Irrigation, I don't know the answer to that. I do agree with you 100% that the trees, all of the plants will definitely need water the first year, a lot of water the first year because they need to get established. But one of the reasons I selected as many natives as I could and hardy plants is that I didn't want to have to rely on irrigation throughout their life. I wanted them to be able to, once they get established, obviously, to be able to kind of navigate large swings of different conditions in terms of rainfall and water that's available to them. But I'm not 100% sure on the correct answer to give you on the well. Maybe Sotir or Bill can chime in on that.
Now that we have a plan that we can work with, I think getting water the first year, it's obviously very important on any plant that is planted. I have not sat down with an irrigation subcontractor and decide what we want to see done here, but when I meet with them, I will have this landscape plan, and with Kate's assistance, we can come up with a plan to distribute water to the site so that the plants survive rather than have to replace them because they died on us. So I don't have the irrigation plan to share, but I can provide it to you once we get to that stage. That's okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Yeomans.
may I ask a question?
Yep.
Relative to Soter, relative to the your irrigation plan, if I may suggest that you put piping from that well to various far reaches of your property with a faucet head, and the locking faucet head that can't be tampered with, that would provide the opportunity for that well for a hose to be hooked up in these far reaches for the first year at least, for these multiple plantings to be just hand watered periodically, because shrubs can't really depend on a sprinkler system to get adequate water to them. So, you might want to think about that plan to just have, 4 faucets in various points. And I've had big yards where I have done that. And, they run the underground pipe like it's a sprinkler system, and then they blow it out, every fall before the freeze. And come spring, you just, you turn it on again. So that might be a good alternative to dealing with the plants. Forgetting the grass area, that's a separate issue for an irrigation system. And if
Okay,
I may, go ahead.
So I need to interject. Okay, so we're here
Yep.
to review the landscape plan. I think
Okay.
a lot of what you're getting into, Bill, is good information, and perhaps you and Satir can have a conversation offline, because
Okay.
it's really out of scope for
Yep.
the landscape plan. That's really what we're here for. So
May-
if you have further comments that focus on
Okay.
what's been presented and discussed.
Will do. And so, Chair, I'll be happy to have an offline discussion with you on that if you would like. One last question of Kate, if I, in that area that we discussed where that wall with the fence on top of it and your redwood, your red twig dogwoods, all of those are deciduous. So perhaps putting in a couple of japonicas or a couple of rhodies in there just to break up it, because the red twig is beautiful in the winter months, but maybe to have a few green spots on that wall rather than all branch shrubs. So that's the end of my comments, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the board? If anybody wants to try to live up to those previous comments? Any comments from the board in all seriousness? I don't have any either at this point. Although I do have one probably overarching issue, and that's it. I'm not a landscape expert. And I think my expectation is that we really should probably have somebody peer review this. And I don't know if that's what your expectation is right now, Satir, or not. It seems like that's the right thing for us to do, is have some professional peer review this and then come back and give it the blessing, the approval. Is that consistent with your expectations?
Mr. Chairman, I yield to your wishes, because if you have concerns of what the presentation had and you'd like to have alternatives to be reviewed by a peer reviewer, so be it. But if the plan presented is adequately addressing the concerns that the board had in the past, and I don't know whether or not you need to have a peer reviewer. But again, the decision is you and the board.
Yeah. Okay. I think you were looking to get started, and I think with respect to the trees that are being removed, I think you have enough information now that you can actually start your site work. And peer reviewing a landscape plan is not necessarily going to interfere with you being able to start your site work, correct?
As long as the board lets the building inspector, the enforcement agent, know that we have the permission of the board to go ahead and do the site clearing, yes, we could do that work.
Okay, and I think we're at that point, because the issue that you need to know is trees that are being removed versus staying. I think that's been well defined. It's on the print. The print is consistent with what we looked at the site walkthrough. So I think you're good in that respect. I personally am not a professional, so I would like an alternative professional, a peer review, to look at this. Almost from day one with this project, the landscaping for behind the project along Bryant Circle, the landscaping at the front of the project, as seen from people coming into town, have been very critical. It's something that we've talked about a lot. And with that in mind, is as much as, Mr. Yeomans has a lot to say about it and all very valuable, I think it would be the right thing to do is get the board to peer review it. So I don't know if any other board members have any thoughts on that. If we're in agreement, then, I can work offline with Katrina and try and line someone up. I did actually inquire a little bit for folks that could peer review. I think we can do something, kind of through Graves Engineering. They have someone that they've used in the past. So, I think we can work that out. Any thoughts or comments from the board on that?
I'd like to
Well, you
comment
guys
on
are
that.
quite a bunch. Yes, Mr. Yeomans.
As I said, when I initially made my comments, I think that this landscape plan is as good as any that I've reviewed myself personally over the years. I think it's very comprehensive. I understand your point, Bill, if you feel a need to review it. I think what has been proposed here is when these plantings are mature, this is going to be a very, very nice looking surrounding property on these three buildings. So I think your point of, making sure that if you feel and if the board feels that a peer review on this is necessary, then we will vote that way. But I do not personally think it's necessary because I think this is very well done. I think the variety is very, very good. And where she's placed plants and she's dealing with shade trees, because I thought about that too with the white pines, but knowing that they'll grow okay in a little bit of shade, as is the concolor fir. I think it's a complete and comprehensive plan, but I'll leave that up to you and the other board members to decide if we want to do a peer review on this portion of it. But I think your point of making sure if the board decides that they want a peer review of the landscape plan, we should not hold up. We should approve that in sections that the tree removal is approved to go forward. And then, if the board decides that they want to have a landscape plan review, then we'll do it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, who was that?
Mary Ann.
Oh, there you go. Thanks, Marion. Yeah.
So I would at the very least like to see a rendition, if at all possible, of what the site would look like with the selected plantings at a mature level to see what kind of buffer and what kind of screening they provide. Because, a 6 to 8 foot tree may sound big, but my personal experience with landscaping, in my own home, 6 to 8 foot tree is not a large tree. So, at the very least, maybe a computer rendition or some type of something we can look at what the site would look like at the point where the trees are mature.
I think that's an excellent idea. Thank you. Other thoughts or comments from the board? Okay, let me just double check, make sure there isn't anyone trying to say something. Okay. So at this point, I think what we should do just to kind of formalize it is I'd like to break it in and make a motion to accept the report from Urban Forestry Solutions dated, there's no date on it.
Look in the footer, March 23rd, I believe.
Oh, is that where it is?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the header of the second page. That's interesting.
Okay.
Okay, so accept the report of Urban Forestry Solutions dated March 23rd, 2021. That report, so a motion to accept that and that details the trees that are being removed and the trees that are staying, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that should be sufficient for Mr. Berger and sufficient for Mr. Papalillo and team to move forward with the site work that they want to do. So I heard a so moved from Mr. Yeomans, I think. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Any further discussion on that portion of the presentation tonight or on the motion? So hearing none, by roll call vote as everything must be. Ms. DeRochers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Who am I forgetting? That's, Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
And Chairman votes yes. So I think that the existing site conditions and what gets removed, I think, is settled. As far as a peer review, is there any other objections, if you will? And I'm not even sure that Mr. Yeomans is really objecting. Any other concerns or reasons anybody think we should not do a peer review? Okay, then let's just proceed in that direction, and I can work with Katrina offline to arrange for that to happen. I envision, engaging someone, perhaps the company that works with Graves Engineering. I imagine they do a site visit of some sort. They work a little bit with the landscape architect, review things, and then come and share their findings with us at a future meeting where we can approve or not, I suppose, the landscape plan. That all sound reasonable? All right. Mr. Papalillo, is there anything else from you and your team this evening, or is that it?
That's it. Mr. Chairman, just for scheduling purposes, I will be preparing a demolition permit and eventually a building permit application to file for the first building. The building department, based on the comprehensive permit, they will not issue a building permit until the landscape plan is completed. I was just wondering what would be a reasonable schedule to accomplish your goals, to have the peer reviewer complete its review of the plan we submitted. You think this is something that can be done over the next 30 days or so?
I have no idea. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that? And I know you know probably just about as little as I do on it at this point, but.
I know a little bit more. I know who I'm going to call, Bill. Other than that, I'm just as much in the dark. I can make a phone call tomorrow and try to, one, see if there's interest by that party, and two, try to get a handle on possible turnaround time, knowing that this person is not familiar with the project whatsoever right now.
So, Satir, I hear what you're saying. Time, you're at that point where you want to get moving, so time is of the essence. I think all I can do at this point is give you my word that we'll work as diligently and aggressively as we can to get it done and get back in front of you so we can approve it.
So that the board knows too, with the authorization to clear the site and remove those trees that we think they need to be removed, there will be a period of about 3 to 4 months for site work to be done before we have the foundation ready for us to pour. So I said 30 days, but it can be longer. I just don't want to get to the point where the building department may need additional information and review stuff, and I don't have them. So I was using the 30 days as just a guide more than anything else. It might be more than 30 days, which is fine,
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it will be. I can't imagine that we would need that much time. So I think we'll be in good shape. But again, as I said, we will. I will do everything I can to move it along as expeditiously as we can.
Appreciate that.
Yep, Mr. Yeomans.
Oh, Brian had his hand up first.
Go ahead, and then we'll go to Mr. Waller.
Okay. I don't think good landscape architects are sitting around waiting for work. It's springtime. There's a lot going on. I personally don't think a peer review is going to change this plan. I think Mary Ann's point is a valid one. I mean, you can go, we can go on this plan and tell you how big that tree is going to be in 5 years and 10 years. I don't think that's necessary. I think it's a holdup of this project. And, I am really not in favor of having to do a peer review on a plan that I consider to be one of the best that, I've looked at in messing around with, growing trees and shrubs and killing them both. That, I think this is a good plan. And I think that we could approve it, as is. But I'll leave that up to you and the decision of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Waller.
So I was just going to ask, what are we expecting the outcome of the peer review to be? I mean, if it's just a blessing of this plan, or maybe swapping out maybe some species of certain plants for others. I mean, is that something we could, approve the plan, but reserve the right to, modifications based on peer review?
Yeah. So, isn't this the classic case of we don't know what we don't know? And, I think that's oftentimes why we do peer review, you can go back to with site plans and things like that. I mean, when Mr. Adams was on the board, well, actually he's back on the board. I mean, he's somebody who did this work all the time and he had a lot of input, but, at the end of the day, we always would have, an engineer and people, other professionals do that peer review, for that reason of, what is it that we don't know? And that's why we get outside help to, help us on these things. That's why I look at it. For me, it comes down to just very simply, I'm not a professional on this. And while I have a lot of respect for Mr. Yeoman's opinion, I don't know that it's the right thing for this board to rely on just another member's, experiences. So that's, I don't know. I mean, I guess hopefully it is just a blessing, but maybe they turn around and point out something that Mr. Yeomans and the landscape architect haven't identified. And the other thing is that, just based on what Mr. Papalillo said, I don't think we're holding things up at all. He's a few months away from building permits. So, I don't see something like this taking a few months. If Jeff comes back to us and says, these people can't engage for 6 months, you know what, then we get back together and we make a decision. I think would be the way to go.
I think that makes sense. If there is some time loss around it.
Yeah. Further comments, thoughts? Okay. So I guess we're done with Prentice Place at this point for this evening. Satir, we're all set?
So what was the final decision as to what the board is intending on doing? I know there was Bill's comments and then your comments, and are we doing the peer review or are we not doing the peer review?
We're doing a peer review.
Okay. Understood.
Anything else? We good? Okay. Next up would be Elm Rock Estates. Mr. Boardman.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I appreciate everybody's time, and I just wanted to do an update on the schedule of the site. We're just about pretty much finished with the site, believe it or not. We've got another about maybe 2 months to go for the most part. I think the majority is going to be done in the next 30 days. We've already started raising the final castings in place, and we're getting ready to top coat I believe the first week of May. So we've made quite a bit of progress, and we're here tonight for an update to respectively request for a bond reduction on the site stabilization portion of our bill, our bond. And I think I'm filling in for Steve O'Connell. He was at another meeting, so I'm not too sure if he was here, but he was in contact with Jeff from Graves as well on the letter you guys received dated April 6th of 21 with his recommendation of what the amount would be.
Right, so I mean, Steve is here. I don't know if he has anything to say, or do we just want to go straight to Jeff, who did his letter?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. Thanks. If I'm needed, I'm happy to chime in, but I think Jeff's letter speaks for itself, and maybe he wants to speak about it. But if not, just here in support.
Jeff, if you just kind of give us a rundown on it, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The bottom line is there's two construction cost estimates and sureties values that have been established for the project. One was before the ground was broken, and that had to do with site stabilization. And that is the surety amount for which the applicant's requesting a reduction. The second cost estimate is for all the infrastructure and work remaining, and they're not requesting a reduction of that. Going back to the stabilization estimate, basically covered what does it take to, I call, batten down the hatches if construction is ended and the developer removes his workforces from the site. And our last estimate was over $200,000. Obviously, a lot of work was done early in the process. They got the stormwater basins built and vegetatively covered. And since that time, other work has gone on. And quite frankly, if I can boil it all down, they've got some hydroseeding to do. The topsoil's been spread around. There's a couple hundred yards sitting for whatever touch-up they need to do. And we needed to carry some money for reestablishing a few temporary erosion controls between the house lots that are not fully vegetated yet and the stormwater basins that are. And that amount of money, Mr. Chairman, including the contingency, inflation, and money for administrative services, comes to $29,000. Big reduction from the 200,000 plus that was in place when ground was broken. That's about it. I've been impressed with the work, the quality of the work, the speed of the work, and looking forward to getting this one wrapped up. And I've got some projects that have been sitting here in my files for 20 years and they're still not done. And I'm glad to see this one getting done.
Excellent. So really what we need to do this evening is vote on reducing something, and I'm not sure what that something is. Is there a term for this part of the bond? And maybe I should go back to the comprehensive permit itself, which unfortunately I don't have a copy of in front of me.
Bill, it's the site stabilization bond.
Thank you.
Or the site disturbance bond is what we have it listed as.
Site what bond?
Site disturbance.
Excellent, thank you.
And I believe it addresses condition number H.2, Henry.2.
Also, Mr. Chairman, Katrina could probably verify it, but I believe the original bond amount is $244,000.
Yes,
so
that is
okay.
the original amount.
All right, beautiful. Okay, great.
And I agree with that amount.
Okay, comments or questions or thoughts from the board? seems fairly straightforward. I will say that I drove through there, I think it was last Friday evening, was surprised by a couple of things. One, yeah, it is almost done. I think there's just a couple of homes that back in the end there that are still under active construction. I was also surprised at how much of a community in the neighborhood it seems to be there. It was early in the evening, and I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday. It was one of those two evenings, and it was almost like a block party going on out in the street. I felt almost like I was driving, through someone's homes. The way people were out in the streets and congregating and enjoying the neighborhood. So, to Mr. Boardman and your team, I think you've built a really nice neighborhood there. I think it's quite a successful neighborhood, a great addition to Grafton, and thank you. If there's no other comments or thoughts from anyone, then at this point, I think I'd entertain a motion to reduce the site disturbance bond per condition H2 of the Elm Rock Estates comprehensive permit to $29,000.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Then again, by roll call vote, Ms. DeRosiers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Mr. Waller,
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Katrina, I do have that written. If you need it, I can email it to you or,
Yes, please, if you can.
okay. Yep.
Katrina, this is Steve. Eastland's bank will typically need a memo signed by Bill. So if what we normally do will suffice, that would be great.
Yep, I'll get it typed up tomorrow and try and get it over to Bill as soon as I can.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, this is Chad as well. We appreciate all the members of all the boards and department heads in Grafton. It has been a pleasure working with everybody, and want to thank you guys as well.
Thank you. Okay. If that's all for Elm Rock, then next up would be Providence Road, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, Providence Road Commons.
Brian. Brian, can you hear us?
Brian, you have the floor.
Yeah, we're in tonight to see about buttoning up some first loose end to end this project out. And that was relative to waiving the requirement for the bus shelter for the project. We've submitted a letter requesting that to be waived, along with two letters, one from the school department relative to their bus routes and how they would not send a bus in through the facility. And secondly, a letter from the homeowners association, Providence Road Commons Homeowners Association, which was something that the board requested previously, that they were on board with it. So basically with those in place, we'd like to ask the board to waive the requirement for installing a bus shelter for the project. And that's where we're at for tonight.
Okay, so just to just kind of set the table here for the board. What they're actually doing is requesting a project change. Our role right now is determine that it is a minor project change. If we were to determine it's a major change, then it would have to then be advertised and go through the formal hearing process, et cetera. So this is, and we've done this plenty of times before. So this is a request for determination that it's a minor project change. And we've also been through this whole thing with them before. And I think really the one big outstanding issue was the agreement of the homeowners association. And we have that in a letter at this point. So any questions or comments or thoughts from the board? You are a quiet group tonight. Mr. Walsh, do you have anything to add at this point?
Nothing at all, Mr. Chairman. I'm just thinking of a similar situation, maybe over at Flint Pond Estates, but that more had to do with constructing a turnout on Creeper Hill Road, rather than turnouts within the project. So I think that's an apples and oranges comparison. I think the issue at hand is whether or not a shelter is necessary for those waiting for a bus that is going to stop at the project entrance. That's what it boils down to. And I don't have an opinion one way or the other.
Okay, does someone with you have their hands up? Somebody want to speak that we see? No, leave. Don't. You didn't need to disturb them.
It's
okay.
Oliver. Yeah. What can I say? That's my
I
cat.
just saw I saw the hands up.
He actually has 5 fingers, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Then you scared him, he left. He left the room.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yep. All right. If nobody else has any comments, I think this is fairly straightforward. So, I think what we need is a motion to determine the request for project change is minor. The request for project change dated April 9th, 2021 for Providence Road Commons is a minor project change.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote again. Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans.
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. So I think Katrina just needs to type that up, and that'll be good to go. You guys need anything else from us this evening, or is that the only issue?
You're referring to me?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Mr. McGowan.
The only thing is I just give the board an update, and Jeff Walsh as well. I will be submitting the as-built plans so that he can do his final review, and we can get the sign-offs, and then we'll be back before the board to hopefully close this out.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next order of business would be minutes from, what was it, February 25th. I did review them and redline them. I know Katrina sent those red lines out. Katrina, I don't know if you want to put those up and share them, or if anyone else has any other additions or changes.
I think they're good as submitted.
Did everyone get a chance, or do we want to put them up and see them?
I emailed them to everybody, so everybody had a chance to review them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I reviewed. They look good to me.
Same here.
Okay, so entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of February 25th, 2021. It would be as amended because I amended them. So motion to accept February 25th, 2021 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Again, roll call. Ms. DeRosiers?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Anything else we need to cover this evening?
We have received a new case. It came in today. It's
Wow.
Bill, I don't know if you remember it. It's 331 Providence Road. It's a house in the OLI district that wants to add an accessory in-law apartment. You spoke to Bob about a year ago on this one. So that
No,
just,
I don't remember.
I know you
That's
don't.
okay.
So that one just came in today, and I did speak to someone else who might be submitting anything, but I haven't gotten anything yet. But that's the only thing that's come in.
So, all right, we probably can schedule that via email if it just came in today. Unless they're extremely anxious for some reason, we probably want to push out a little bit. Let's see if maybe we're going to get a landscape review in the next 5 or 6 weeks, and then we can kind of do them all on the same night, something like that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
all right. If they're really anxious or something, let me know, and we can figure out something sooner. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. We got to do this on roll call as well. Ms. DeRosiers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.